What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're going to be talking about 10 Lives of Wolverine #4 by Benjamin Percy, Joshua Cassara, and Federico Vicentini. And in this video, we're going to be talking about how Charles Xavier is going to be saved from being assassinated by an Omega Red controlled Wolverine by the most unlikely mutant. How Null, former god of the symbiotes, influence is going to save Wolverine from Omega Red in the past, and more importantly, how Wolverine's time-traveling shenanigans are changing his backstory but preserving it at the same time. We're gonna talk about all this and more right now, but first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, hit that subscribe button. I post multiple videos throughout the week, plus live stream the Blerd Cave every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. So hit that bell button, that way you don't miss anything. With that out of the way, let's talk about 10 Lives of Wolverine #4.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
When last we left off, Wolverine had been overtaken by Omega Red and was going to be used as a weapon to kill Charles Xavier, and pretty much for about roughly the same reasons that we had talked about before. Omega Red makes the same claims that even I brought up with the previous issue, that what better tragedy is it for Xavier's favorite soldier to become his own assassin? I literally said this very same thing when last we talked about it. This, in the eyes of Omega Red, is what he would probably consider the most poetic of justices. But that's not going to happen, and Charles Xavier is going to have his life saved because clearly Omega Red, because of the way time is flowing, he's not successful in his attempts, at least not yet. This Omega Red controlled Wolverine is going to end up meeting his match because of something that Logan had done prior to Omega Red taking over his body. We remember in the previous issue that Wolverine had turned on Team X, and this is kind of how I posited that the hostilities between Wolverine and his former allies Sabretooth and Maverick end up coming into fruition in what is a subtly remixed timeline due to all the things that have happened as a result of Wolverine and Omega's time traveling. Sabretooth has been tracking Wolverine this entire time, and he is one of the people I kind of assumed would wind up saving Charles Xavier, but maybe not in so much a direct way, which is exactly what happens. He's not there to save Xavier, and Xavier hasn't let Sabretooth out of the hole so that he can go back and control this version of himself. And while originally I thought the idea of Charles Xavier just saying, screw it, I'm gonna pull a Thanos, I'll just do it myself, I thought that idea would be very interesting, but that's not what happens. Sabretooth is doing this of his own volition. Once again, not because he wants to save Xavier. He doesn't even know who Xavier is, and no matter how hard Omega Red tries to convince Sabretooth that he should help him kill Xavier, Sabretooth isn't interested in anything that Omega Red has to say. He just wants to kill Wolverine. He sees a Wolverine speaking to him, he knows he's angry with Wolverine, so that's exactly what he's gonna do. He's gonna take him out. He literally kills him and eats his heart right out of his chest. And this is how Wolverine never winds up leaving Team X, because Sabretooth, while yes, he was there to kill Wolverine, he knows that he has orders, and his handlers have commanded that he bring Wolverine back, and Wolverine is gonna be reprogrammed. And that's not the only thing in regards to Wolverine's past that's kind of getting messed with subtly. We also can't forget about Dr. Cornelius, the man who was, for all intents and purposes, responsible for the Weapon X program, the same program that Wolverine went through that had adamantium laced to his skeleton. Dr. Cornelius comes up once again as Omega Red is trying to take out Wolverine so that he can continue his mission. And while everything is proceeding about, par for the course as normal, Omega Red decides to interfere with this moment and take over Dr. Cornelius. That way, he can ensure that Wolverine is killed while he's being strapped down and sedated within the Weapon X program. While this is technically a retcon that came up during Donny Cates' Web of Venom that came out in 2018, in that issue, we discovered that Wolverine had encountered the symbiotes back during a mission with Nick Fury, and he was overtaken by one. And as we remember from Donny Cates' run, whenever someone is overtaken by a symbiote, whenever a symbiote bonds to a body, whether it's human or otherwise, otherwise, that creature now possesses a codex. And while it did seem like that symbiote was completely burned off of Wolverine's body, the codex was still latching around somewhere in there, or at least a small piece of that symbiote was still in there somewhere, and Dr. Cornelius was able to find it. It seems like whenever Omega Red takes over a person's body, he doesn't really seem to take advantage of whatever knowledge they have about Wolverine or Xavier or anything else for that matter. He just kind of seems to be operating under his own knowledge. So he didn't know that there was something alien inside of Wolverine's body. Hell, Dr. Cornelius barely knew. He knew that there was a parasite within Logan's body, but he didn't really know what it was, and he was experimenting to see exactly what it was. And this is actually what saves Wolverine from being killed by Omega Red. Now, this may not make sense to some, but it kind of struck me as Null's influence taking over Wolverine, because as we see in this issue, when the symbiote takes over Wolverine's body, we can see the patented Null spiral on Wolverine's forehead while he's being overrun by the symbiote. This is usually a telltale sign that the symbiote in question is being influenced by Null. And not for necessarily the purpose of saving Wolverine's life. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying Null just likes to create chaos and kill anyone in his way and perpetuate himself as much as humanly possible. That's likely what was going on here. And we know that eventually, at some point, Dr. Cornelius does wind up getting killed. However, we later learn that he's alive and well during 2014's Death of Wolverine by Charles Soule and Steve McNiven. So we know that Wolverine is not going to kill Dr. Cornelius here. And in fact, it's actually going to be this interference from Null that's going to reset everything yet again. All the things that could have potentially been changed here are going to be reset because Dr. Cornelius is going to try and kill Wolverine while the symbiote is overtaking his body, using fire on him, which is one of the key weaknesses of pretty much all of the symbiotes. It's this moment that is going to allow Dr. Cornelius to subdue Wolverine yet again, and this is what's going to set up Wolverine getting the adamantium put into his body, because since he couldn't take over the symbiote, he couldn't control it the way that he could control Wolverine, he decided that the adamantium was a better option. Once again, everything that Wolverine is doing, everything is changing. Little things here and there are being changed, but time always wants to happen. As we've talked about anytime that we talk about time traveling story arcs, time always wants to happen. Anything that is supposed to happen is going to happen anyway. So even though Wolverine thought that he could change certain things, or that, other outside influences have tried to change certain things, time is going to happen just the way that it wants to happen. Even in the case of Lady Deathstrike's father, Kenji, aka Lord Darkwind, during the events of Alpha Flight number 34, Kenji was supposed to do a kamikaze attack on an aircraft carrier, but he failed in his attack. This was an event that scarred him and later led to his obsession that turned Kenji into Lord Darkwind, and thus later galvanizing his own daughter Yuriko into becoming Lady Deathstrike. In this case, of course, Kenji is being controlled by Omega Red because, as it would turn out, Xavier's father is on that aircraft carrier. But just as he was unsuccessful in Alpha Flight number 34 in his kamikaze attack, he's gonna be unsuccessful here, but for completely different reasons. It's one of those situations where, once again, time is still happening. This occurs because Wolverine takes over himself back during World War II and dive bombs Kenji's plane, thwarting his kamikaze mission and yet still creating the same effect. Even though the events didn't play out exactly the same, it still happened. Some may think that this is a little too extra, some may call it lazy writing, but honestly, this is kind of par for the course for at least most time travel style stories when people are trying to go back and change certain things. Sometimes it just is the way it is. Sometimes things are meant to be the way they are. And while I think a lot of people probably expected things to be dramatically changed, I think the thing that 10 Lives of Wolverine is trying to get across is that no matter what Logan does, and I would even dare say to a point, no matter what Omega Red and Mikhail Rasputin do, things are going to happen the way they want to happen, regardless of what their influence is. They may be able to tweak certain things here or there, but in the end, it's all gonna come down to the same thing. Another reason why a lot of this is happening too is because Charles Xavier has ordered Jean Grey to wipe the memories of anyone who was within a 1-mile radius of Omega Red and Wolverine whenever they messed with time. So once again, everything is gonna kind of stay the way it was, but there's still going to be repercussions that they can't foresee. And once again, I think we've already seen some of them. Like I said before, how Maverick has been acting towards Wolverine as of late is definitely one of them. We also know that as this issue brings up the history that is connected to the character Lady Deathstrike in the upcoming issue of X-Men number 10, Lady Deathstrike will be making an appearance, so there's some synchronicity there. Not to say it's connected, but I just thought it was interesting that she's brought up here and she's teased at the end of X-Men number 9. I think that Mikhail Rasputin has finally realized that trying to change the past is not the way forward. Given everything I just said, it's not going to be successful, so he's changed his tactics. So rather than have Omega Red try and take over a Wolverine in the past, what he's going to do is have Omega Red take over a Wolverine in the present. When Wolverine is killed by Sabretooth in the past, while Wolverine's present day consciousness is technically being overridden by Omega Red at the time, he is still, for all intents and purposes, in that body in that time. He's unconscious right now, and I don't think it's necessarily because, he was killed in the past. We all know he has a healing factor. That stuff is superficial to him. Even having his heart eaten out of his body is not really a death sentence for someone like Wolverine. However, it is a death sentence for Charles Xavier because Omega Red has taken over the present day Wolverine's body and has already attacked him. Now, granted, this attack that he has hit him with is not a fatal one. He's only stabbed him in the shoulder. And due to some things that we're going to be talking about in the video for 10 Deaths of Wolverine, we can make an assumption that this attack might not be as successful as Omega Red or Mikhail Rasputin would have liked. That's all I wanted to talk about here. I thought about combining this week's videos of 10 lives and 10 deaths of Wolverine, but we're not going to do that. We're actually going to keep it separate. So if you want to know my musings about what's going on in 10 Deaths of Wolverine number 4 that also came out this week, go check out that video. It'll be dropping shortly after this one, so stay tuned. And once again, hit that subscribe button, tap that bell, that way you know when it drops. But anyways, let me know what you thought about 10 lives of Wolverine number 4. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.